Emma had always been the type of woman who believed in keeping things simple. She lived in a quiet neighborhood in Ohio with her husband, Daniel, and their lives ran on a rhythm that was both comforting and predictable. On Friday evenings, Emma usually cooked something hearty. Daniel would pour them both a glass of wine, and they would watch a movie. But this Friday was different. They had invited their friends, Sarah and Michael, another couple they had grown close to over the last year, for what was supposed to be just a fun evening together. None of them knew then how much that night would stir up emotions they had kept buried for a long time. Emma had spent the afternoon preparing the house. She lit candles in the living room, arranged snacks on the coffee table, and made sure everything looked welcoming. Daniel came home from work just in time to help her finish setting things up. He kissed her on the cheek, his smile relaxed, the way it always was after a long week. "They'll be here soon," Emma said, smoothing down her blouse nervously. "Relax," Daniel told her with a chuckle. "It's just Sarah and Michael. We know them well." Still, Emma felt an odd heaviness in her chest. When the doorbell rang, Emma took a deep breath before opening the door. Sarah stood there in a long cardigan, her husband Michael by her side. Their smiles were warm, but Emma thought she detected a strain in Sarah's eyes. "Come in," Emma greeted, pulling her friend into a hug. The four settled into the living room, laughter echoing as they reminisced about shared dinners and trips they had taken together. For the first hour, everything felt lighthearted. They talked about work, the rising cost of groceries, and silly stories from their younger years. But as the evening stretched on, Emma began noticing subtle cracks. Sarah's laugh sometimes faltered too quickly. Michael avoided her gaze more than once. Daniel tried to keep the atmosphere easy, but even he seemed to pick up on something beneath the surface. To distract everyone, Emma suggested they play a board game. They all agreed, and soon the coffee table was cleared for a round of Scrabble. The game began with friendly competition, but midway through, Sarah grew quiet. She seemed distracted, staring at the tiles without arranging them. Emma leaned closer and whispered, "Are you okay?" Sarah gave a small nod, forcing a smile, but Emma knew it wasn't real. Later, Sarah excused herself to step out onto the porch. Emma followed after a few moments, sensing her friend needed her. The cool night air wrapped around them as Sarah leaned against the porch railing, staring at the streetlights. "What's going on, Sarah?" Emma asked gently. Sarah hesitated, her voice low when she finally spoke. "Michael and we've been having a hard time." Emma's heart clenched at her words. She reached out, placing a supportive hand on Sarah's arm. Sarah's eyes glistened. "It feels like we're losing each other. And tonight I didn't know how to pretend everything's fine." Inside, Daniel and Michael sat in silence, the weight of unspoken thoughts between them. When Emma and Sarah returned, the mood was subdued. Michael looked at Sarah, his expression a mixture of regret and longing, while Daniel poured more coffee for everyone, trying to keep the atmosphere calm. Eventually, they all talked, really talked. For hours, words spilled out that had been kept hidden for months. Michael admitted he had been distant, wrapped up in work and stress. Sarah confessed how lonely she had felt, even while sitting beside him. Daniel and Emma shared their own struggles as a couple, the small disagreements and the compromises they had learned to make. By the time the clock struck midnight, something had shifted. The night that had begun as a simple gathering had turned into a raw, emotional unraveling. There were tears, moments of silence, but also glimmers of understanding. None of it was easy, but it was real. When Sarah and Michael finally left, Emma stood at the window watching their car drive away. She felt drained, yet strangely lighter, as though a truth had been unearthed not just for them, but for herself too. Daniel came up behind her, wrapping his arms gently around her shoulders. "You okay?" he asked softly. Emma nodded. "I think so," she whispered. In that moment, she realized that sometimes when another couple joins in, not for fun, not for games, but in sharing their truths, it can unravel everything you thought you knew. And yet, out of the unraveling can come a chance to rebuild, to understand more deeply, and to see people, even those closest to you, in a new light. That night didn't end the way Emma expected, but it left her with a lesson she would carry for years. Life doesn't always stay within the lines we draw. Sometimes it spills over, messy and complicated, but also profoundly human. The weeks after that night brought changes. Sarah and Michael began counseling, taking small steps toward healing. Emma and Daniel, too, found themselves talking more openly than before, admitting things they had once brushed aside. One night, as Emma sat by the window in her living room, she thought about how fragile relationships could be and how easily they could unravel if left unattended. She also thought about resilience, the quiet strength that allowed people to face their flaws, to confront their pain, and to choose each other despite it all. Looking back, Emma realized that night with Sarah and Michael hadn't been out of control in the way the phrase might suggest. It hadn't been reckless or wild. It had been out of control because the walls came down, the facades crumbled, and the truth came pouring out. For Emma, that was more powerful than anything else. And so, life continued, not perfect, but more honest than before. And Emma knew that was what mattered most.